Hey, what's going on, everyone? This is Mitch. Good Saturday morning to you all. Hope you guys are doing awesome out there this morning and having a wonderful start to your day and a great beginning to your new weekend out there so far. There is a good bit to talk about in this morning's video, but the first thing we'll cover, of course, is today's weather. We'll speak on current conditions, latest outlooks, and then we'll break down the country section by section. There's a couple areas that we'll zoom into state-wise and just region-wise that do have the higher risk of more high impact weather for today. So we'll do that. After that, we'll skip forward and speak on the days to come as far as the outlooks. Won't spend a whole lot of time on that, but we will spend more time on an update on the tropics than what we've been doing. And I do want to speak on the risk of a tropical storm forming in the southern areas of the Gulf, the Bay of Campeche. Some people say one or the other, but anyways, we'll speak on that. And I do want to watch an area of the northern Gulf, maybe off the coast of the southeast, for some tropical development as we get a few days deep into July, maybe around the 4th of July and a couple days after. None of these areas to watch are overly concerning. Now, it is going to bring a lot of rain to areas in Mexico, Central America. It's already doing so right now as far as the first system we'll talk about that's already dubbed an invest right at this moment. But we'll speak on all of it, get very detailed, kind of geek out with you guys a little bit. It'll be a little teaser of what's to come later this hurricane season when we go really crazy with the details when speaking on these larger tropical systems. So if you guys have not subscribed, certainly consider doing that. Like the video if you like it, and if anybody has anything that I can pray about or pray over, pray over, please put it in the comments below. Let's get rocking and rolling. So, latest conditions as far as the radar, we have areas of rain and storms up here in the upper Midwest, areas of the plains. You got this here across the Dakotas, Minnesota, getting into sections of northern Iowa. Big plume of heavy rain that is definitely interrupting you guys this morning up here in Maine and just areas of New England. A little bit of moisture hanging off the Gulf coastline across the deep south states. Areas of rain across the southern plains, the western U.S., pretty quiet. Some rain across eastern areas of Montana, though. So that's the radar as far as watches, warnings, and advisories. You know, it's not littered with much, honestly. We got some red flag warnings, some heat advisories. We got some extreme heat warnings across the southwest where the heat is really beginning to get going, which isn't really anything unusual. This time of the year, it's always just hotter than 80s down here in the southwest. So, but outside of that, I mean, nothing too crazy to mention here. The latest outlook from the Storm Prediction Center, we got a marginal risk across areas of the Mid-Atlantic into sections of the Northeast, level 1 out of 5. So some of these summer storms could pack more of a punch today. With large area of the country in the light green, at least has a risk of thunderstorms just in general. And even if you just live in the light green, these storms could hit strong to severe limits. We see that every day in the summer. But of course, this is the more highlighted area up here. We have a slight risk that goes all the way from like Rapid City, drops all the way down to just north of North Platte. Nebraska, gets all the way through Sioux Falls, all the way over to Minneapolis, Eau Claire. So this region right here, and let's back it up a little bit. I like this view. Sometimes all those town and city names clutters up the image a little bit too much. But the tornado outlook with this. There is a 5% risk of a tornado within 25 miles of any given location in this brown area. So be mindful of that for today. 2% risk in the green area. A little bit closer look at these regions. And once again, Minneapolis in the crosshairs of this. So tornado threat is elevated, I would say, today. The wind threat, I would not be surprised if they bump up the wind threat another category, which would drive an upgrade from a slight to an enhanced risk, level 3 out of 5. Right now, a slight level 2 out of 5. But I'll click on this. If you live in the yellow, 15% risk of winds exceeding 55 to 60 miles per hour within 25 miles in a given location. In the hail threat, not only do you have the 15% risk of hail exceeding 1 inch in diameter or larger in the yellow, in that same area where you have the higher tornado threat, you also have a 10% risk of this hail being significant in size, which is 2 inch in diameter or larger. So that's this entire black outline area with the black dashes going in between it. Does include St. Cloud down to the Minneapolis area, which is obviously a more highly populated area in this area of the country. So we'll move past this and we'll look at the excessive rainfall outlook. Rainfall, as far as flash flooding, won't be a huge deal today, so that's good. But, you know, anytime you can get a summer thunderstorm, you can get flash flooding. You can get an inch of rain in 15, 20 minutes sometimes across areas of the south. But not really much to speak on in detail with that. But let's speak on the north central U.S. first. So we're going to start to do this where we speak on the area of the country that has the higher risk of more high impact weather first, and then we'll break down everybody else. So let's focus in on the north central U.S. First here. So we'll look at we'll take a broad look at this. This is starting off this morning. As we're starting to get to the afternoon hours, I mean, you're not seeing a whole lot of anything across those areas that run the slight risk. But you start again to this evening, and that's when a line of storms could erupt across areas of central Minnesota. And this line of storms could produce all hazards, honestly. But then you continue to move into later this evening. Line of storms will start to blast through northern central areas of Wisconsin. And then how much convection storms do we get going here in South Dakota, now in Nebraska and Iowa? You know, that's a big question here. It's not looking very widespread in coverage, but it very well could be. So we start to get later tonight, and then we start to get late tonight, like the wee hours of the morning tomorrow, and we got convection blasting through South Dakota, and everything's just scattered about. Then we wake up tomorrow morning to what I think is going to be a pretty hefty line of storms, or just heavy, area of convection in southern areas of Minnesota. But let's just take a deep dive at this, and let's break down South Dakota first, and we're going to go on and just zoom it right on to about 6 p.m. this evening. So time frames up here, and there's not really anything going on based off this particular run of the herd model. But, you know, we take it to about midday. It's lunchtime. We got some storms firing around Rapid City and surrounding areas. Maybe some storms along the Minnesota, South Dakota line. Some storms trying to form right before they fully get into the state of Minnesota. And then, I mean, this is 1, 2 o'clock in the morning, guys. It's pretty late tonight. I would just watch for storms to kind of cruise across the state, west to east. This is 2, this is 3 a.m., 4 a.m. And listen, these storms could produce some very strong gusty winds, large hail. There is always going to be a small risk of a tornado, but it's not very high with these. And we get to 5 a.m., 6 a.m., and then we're waking up tomorrow morning. So it really just doesn't look like these storms, once again, get going until later this evening. I mean, this is 10 p.m., and they're just starting to show up here on the screen. But be mindful of them because, as you know, short-range models can be wrong with this, with the initiation of convection. 5 p.m. in Nebraska. We got a little bit of action here in western sections of the state, but nothing too crazy. We start to get to about 8 p.m. Still nothing too wild based off this model run. Do not look at model guidance. As I always say, it's some grand conclusion what exactly is going to happen. But we get to about 10 p.m. Storms showing up around North Platte. Storms maybe over towards Scottsbluff. But once again, it doesn't look too crazy. But I really think any storms that do form could really produce some strong gusty winds. We get to about midnight. We got storms out here. They look heavier up in South Dakota. Nebraska, they don't look too crazy. This is 3 a.m. This is 4 a.m., 5 a.m., 6 a.m. It looks like most of the heavy activity is up here in northern areas of Nebraska. But it doesn't show a whole lot deeper further south in Nebraska. But that might not be the case. It could be. But that's just model guidance that we have to look at. Starting off around 9 a.m. this morning across Minnesota. We start to take it to about midday. Today, we take it to about this afternoon. A little bit of storm activity trying to get going here in central areas of the state. Duluth could get some weather, some storm activity 4, 5, 6 o'clock this afternoon. But the big area storms that we're concerned about, where do they form? They form right where model guidance is showing, maybe a little south, maybe a little north. Is these right here. And we had some bad storms showing up here. I think it was a couple days ago too. Maybe it was yesterday. But these storms will form more than likely probably inside the Minnesota line and kind of cruise that corridor once again from Fargo to St. Cloud to Minneapolis. So we get to 7 p.m., 8 p.m. You see some of these circles coming off these storms. This indicates more intense updrafts, which means these storms could produce all hazards. It's what we'll sum it up as. But these could produce tornadoes, very large hail, damaging winds, and we start to take it to about 9 p.m., 10 p.m., these storms are probably packing a punch. I mean, you see these storms down here? These could be riding some sort of boundary, could be producing tornadoes. We got storms south of Duluth, between kind of Minneapolis and Duluth. This is 10 p.m. These storms are starting to move into Wisconsin. And these are the storms that could produce tornadoes today. If there's any area that's going to produce tornadoes, it's obviously going to be in the 5% risk area. But we get to 11, 10 p.m. This is midnight tonight. And we still got some storms cruising in southern sections of Minnesota. We get to 2 a.m., 3 a.m., 4 a.m., 5 a.m., 6 a.m., 7 a.m. And we could be waking up tomorrow morning to, once again, some clusters of storms, maybe around the Minneapolis area, Mankato, Rochester. We'll just have to see. And then the last two states we'll zoom into is Iowa and Wisconsin. But here's Iowa. It really doesn't show a whole lot of anything forming. I mean, we got to get after midnight before anything shows up on the map. But listen, a lot of these states, it might not begin to get really active until late tonight. That seems to have been the general theme lately over the last several days with these storms, is these storms don't really do a whole lot during the daytime hours, but we'll just have to watch. So if you live in the northwestern areas of Iowa, be mindful of some storms late tonight. And then Wisconsin, slight risk does extend into this area. Some shower storms possible in the northern counties here. And then some of this action will try to sneak into the UP, maybe in the form of some downpours. But this is the heavy stuff right here. And 10 p.m., big cluster of storms raging out of Minnesota into northern areas of Wisconsin. This could very well be all the way down to Eau Claire or La Crosse. In fact, the slight risk is more so down here, but this particular model run shows most of the heavy activity in the northern areas of the state. But this looks like a nasty line of storms. And once again, this could produce damaging winds, large hail, and tornadoes. And we get to about midnight, this line of storms surging through the northern counties of Wisconsin. And it looks like it weakens as it gets into the UP and Michigan. But, you know, for my family tuning in from that area, Lisa, Steve, be mindful of these, because these could very well hold together more than what models are indicating. And then we get to 3 a.m., 4 a.m., 5 a.m., 6 a.m., 7 a.m., and things should be much quieter as we're waking up tomorrow morning. But we'll have to watch some more convection over here. So if we look at the predicted wind gusts, this is why I think this could upgrade to an enhanced risk, wind driven. This is just between now and around this time tomorrow morning. You see these clusters right here of colors like in the, red and brown. I mean, that's 50, 60, 70 mile per hour wind gusts straddling the South Dakota, Nebraska line. And if you go back and look when we were just breaking down, South Dakota and Nebraska, especially Nebraska, the model guides didn't reflect anything too crazy, but it just tells you that these storms could be producing some higher end wind profiles. So it shows it up here in Minnesota also. You see these little kind of spurts of color. That's 50, 60, 70 mile per hour wind gusts possible with some of these storms. So I think there will be a lot of wind energy with these. It's just, where do these storms form? That's a big question. So moving forward here, looking at the southeast, my cat right here is posing for me. If I look at her too long, she'll meow at me. That's Stormy, not Rocket. But anyways, the southeast today, we get into this afternoon, a lot of Gulf storms form kind of around the Gulf coastline, points inland, and then outflow boundaries will sort of get going and push these storms north across, I would say, more further inland areas of Alabama, Mississippi, Panhandle, Florida. Everywhere else, like up here in Tennessee, the Carolinas, Arkansas, Kentucky, these areas will just get normal pop-up summer thunderstorms. It's impossible to figure out where they'll pop up. But just know that even on that 10, you look on your weather app and it says there's like a 24% chance of storms. But if it says there's a 20 to 30% chance of storms in June, July, or August, and sometimes even a month prior before that or after, just know that you're probably betting that it's not going to rain, and it probably isn't. But just know that there is a possibility a storm could fire up right on top of you. So we get this in motion, and with the loss of daytime eating, yeah, we all do that, right? Daytime heating, everything sort of diminishes. Oh man, we mix up or twist a word every time, at least once in this video, in these videos. But we continue to move into this afternoon. Just a closer look at those storms I'm talking about here. And this is, I mean, this is about early to mid-afternoon. A lot of storm activity. If you're vacationing along the Gulf coastline, you're going to get a lot of storm activity that forms, but it's just not going to be an all-day event still. I mean, just intense heating, just like any day in late June across the south, fires up these storms and they sort of drift around, but it does look like it could be a pretty stormy afternoon across the Gulf coastline and points inland, a few hours or so. So just be mindful of that. Now, the Northeast, big areas of rain getting slung across Maine, areas of New Hampshire, Vermont, and I think most of the day it'll just be cloudy to rainy. But later on this afternoon, some more hefty activity could form down in New York, PA, down to the mid-Atlantic. And you see this line of storms that forms across New York State, Pennsylvania, and then potentially this evening makes it all the way up to the New York City area, Long Island. So let's go on and just take a little deeper dive at this. Starting off around lunchtime in New York, you see the storms that form. It's around 4 p.m. Utica, Syracuse, down to Birmingham. Binghamton. Sorry about the disrespect there. I'm not talking about Alabama. But 6 p.m., we got some storms trying to sneak into the Albany area. Look at these storms down here in PA. We'll talk about that here in a second. And, Robin, you could get some storms later on this evening there in southern Vermont. We continue to move forward here. 8 p.m., some storms getting into the far southern areas of New York State. And some of these storms could still be holding together as they reach New York City, Waterbury, Connecticut, some storms around down here to northern New Jersey also, and then that's it. So just be mindful of a line of storms that sweeps across the state of New York. Now, PA, what we're looking at here, we continue to move forward. We get to 5 p.m. We got some storms near Grove City, St. Mary's, some storms near Williamsport around 6 p.m. Scranton, some storms could move in later this evening, 7, 8 o'clock. And anywhere where these storms form, I mean, they could definitely get to severe limits. They definitely, I would say they likely are. It's just who's going to see it. We get down to Reading, Allentown, Lancaster. Down here we say Lancaster here in South Carolina. But the communities down here down to Philadelphia, you guys could get some storms later this evening. So, and then even around 11 p.m., Hazleton, Harrisburg. These storms are still ongoing. Maybe a lightning show later on this evening across these regions. One of those old-fashioned summer thunderstorms where you're getting tons of lightning off in the distance and everybody and their grandma thinks it's heat lightning. By the way, not to hurt any feelings, but heat lightning is not a thing, guys. It's just lightning way off in the distance, and it's too far away to hear the thunder. But people will argue that point till the cows come home. Trust me, when I was a kid, I loved the idea of there actually being something called heat lightning, but all it is lightning popping off a storm from sometimes it can be 80 miles away, guys. But anyways, we'll go over it. We'll do a lesson on that one of these days. But 4 p.m., we got some storms firing up in northern VA, western Maryland, eastern West Virginia. And these storms could make it all the way down to Charlottesville, Fredericksburg, Washington, D.C., over to Baltimore. I mean, this storm near Charlottesville around 7 p.m. tonight looks pretty intense. And, I mean, some storms could sneak into the Tidewater, the Delmarva area. So just be mindful of some storms in the mid-Atlantic to areas in the Northeast today. South Central U.S., just summer downpours and convection popping up in Southeast Louisiana. Same thing with up here in Arkansas. Southern Missouri, some storms could fire here. And what I would watch for tomorrow morning is a big area, congealed area of showers and storms in eastern Kansas into Missouri. You could wake up to some heavy rain in these areas. And then once again, we'll back it up here. We're going to get some showers and downpours across New Mexico also. But we've already, broke down the north central U.S., so we'll skip to the western U.S., and it's pretty quiet weather out here. Colorado, eastern sections of the state, you guys could get some storms, but maybe some storms up in Wyoming, but, eastern sections of the state, I would say. But outside of that, there's not a whole lot going on for Nevada, Utah, Idaho, points west. It's pretty chill weather. Temperatures, man, look at Maine, 50s. But you start slipping to Vermont, New Hampshire, southern New England. You start to get into more of early summer, spring type kind of deal here. But we get down to the mid-Atlantic, the southeast, typical summer type stuff. And honestly, I mean, these temperatures aren't too bad across the eastern U.S. It's still hot, but I mean, an average day in the summer is hotter than Hades in the south. I mean, let's be real. I've lived in the south all my life, and I don't think you ever quite get used to it. I really don't. But the central and western U.S., it's going to be hot through the plains. Many areas across the central and even the high plains, I mean, are probably going to touch the triple-digit mark. It's getting very hot across the Valley of California, the Southwest, just summer stuff. So, looking at the days to come as far as severe weather threats, there is a slight risk across some of the same areas, but a little bit further east when you compare it to today. But I will tell you guys, there is a larger area that runs a risk of severe weather for tomorrow. For example, you got a marginal risk extending all the way back to the central high plains of Colorado, Wyoming, drapes across most of the state of Nebraska, sinks all the way down to northern Oklahoma, gets into Missouri. But the higher risk of severe weather is in this yellow area, level 2 out of 5 risk. It goes all the way down to pretty much Des Moines, all the way up to the UP in Michigan, pretty much to Marquette. And tornado threat with tomorrow is pretty low, not even a 2% showing up. The wind threat, though, is a 15% risk on winds exceeding 55 to 60 miles per hour within 25 miles in a given location. And then the hail threat is sub 15%, but still there. And then day 3, there is 2 areas to watch out for. And I will mention day 2, there is a marginal risk of severe weather across areas in the mid-Atlantic, upper southeast. But day 3, there is 2 areas to watch that have a higher risk of some of these storms hitting severe limits across Indiana, Illinois, surrounding states, and once again across the mid-Atlantic. This does extend to North Carolina to the flash flooding threat. Not overly concerning for tomorrow or Monday. So let's give you an update on the tropics. Mitch, come on, man. You got to talk right this morning. And let's see if we have a new update. We don't. Listen, right now, as of the 1 a.m. update, so this was several hours ago, we're going to have another update probably in about 15, 20 minutes, and it stinks I'm going to miss it. But we're at a 40% chance of this area of interest. It's called Invest 91L. The spin that's coming off sort of the Yucatan Peninsula, and it's going to emerge into the southern areas of the Gulf here, what we call the Bay of Campeche, Bay of Campeche. Some people say it different. And there is going to be a couple day period where this has a shot to develop. And I think they'll bump this 40% up to maybe a 50 or 60% chance here in the next few updates. So, if this video drops and they do another update and they're like, Mitch, it's a 50% chance now. Chances are I saw it. But I would watch for the 8 a.m. update for them to upgrade this from a 40 to a 50% chance. But this is the area we're going to talk about first. So let's move forward here. And this is it. I know it don't look like a whole lot of anything. And what we'll speak on here is if you look really closely, and I'll be a little rusty talking about this at first because we're just now getting into hurricane season. Let's use pink. If you look really closely, there is a little bit of a spin this way with some of this convection. So that's the way that lower pressure spins in the northern hemisphere. And a tropical system is lower pressure. If you look up here, you kind of got these clouds doing like this. Okay, this is what we call a bit of a ULAC, upper level anticyclone. So it's when the winds in the upper levels of the atmosphere above the convection being produced by this lower pressure is actually working in the opposite direction. You would think that, well, that would mess up the circulation of the tropical system, and it actually doesn't because it's above the main mid to lower level convection of this little bit of a spin that we have known as 91L. So when they move in the opposite direction, it actually pushes air out away from this system, creates an opportunity for more air to rise. Then that gets dispersed away. More air rises after that. And what that does is, and if you don't know, rising air leads to the firing of shower and storm activity. Convection, sinking air kind of does the opposite, right? So if we're getting and allowing for the firing of convection, it creates a more moist environment. Tropical systems like moist air. They do not like dry air. So we'll have much better examples of this deeper into hurricane season. But when we're talking about a more substantial system, but this is a pretty good smaller example of it. Now, this system, it just doesn't look like much. If you notice right here, well, right here, I would say, big convection firing up. You see these colors right here in the white, and let's get this off here. The white and the black. This indicates colder cloud tops. My face is sort of in the way right there, but this indicates more colder cloud tops, things like that. Now, we do have some convection trying to fire here right now in the southern areas of the Gulf. A little bit of convection right here off the northern sections of the Yucatan Peninsula. But the central low pressure is more than likely, let's update this, is right here. It's beginning to emerge back into the open waters of the Gulf. Okay, so this is probably where any kind of central low pressure is. Now, if we look at the sea surface temperatures in this area right here, let's draw this right here in this region. Okay, now this is in Celsius, so it's showing what, 28, 29 degrees Celsius. If you turn that into Fahrenheit, that's about in the low 80s. Okay, and that's warm enough for tropical development. It's even warmer in the northern sections of the Gulf here, which is a bit concerning. We're up to 30, 31 degrees Fahrenheit. I'm sorry, 30. No, not that. I'll be freezing. 30, 31 degrees Celsius. So I mean, we're in the mid. In some cases, we have probably pockets of these waters here in the Gulf that are probably close to 90 degrees in Fahrenheit. So it's definitely warm enough for something to get going. Now, if we continue to move forward here, here's a great example of that ULAC, upper level anticyclone. So this is starting off this morning. If you match up, and I think I pulled it off the screen. I did. So if you match up that satellite image I just showed you, remember I was drawing the winds kind of north of the system, sort of like this. This is winds at 200 millibars. So, I mean, guys, this is 35, 40,000 feet up in the air, well above the actual mid to lower level circulation of this lower pressure, which is probably right into here. Okay, so winds are going in the opposite way of the actual flow of the system around this lower pressure. So it's working with a bit of what we call a favorable upper level wind pattern. Okay, so the flow in the upper levels is favorable for tropical development. The thing that this system doesn't have on its side is time, because it's surrounded by landmass. So a lot of land, right? So it only kind of has this little area of water to really get going. Now, if the currents were making this system kind of go like this, then it would have a lot more time, and that would threaten areas of the lower 48. But it looks like the directional currents is probably going to push it just right into the coastline of Mexico. But it could bring some moisture up in the southern areas of Texas. But, if we kind of get this in motion here, there's a favorable pattern in place. Air is being dispersed out away from the system, allowing for more air to rise. So if we look at the lower level 850 millibar vort here, it shows, and let's go on and move this. Let's move this to the latest 06Z Euro. It shows a tropical system trying to get going here. You see more of the vibrant colors down here in the Bay of Campeche down here, the southern Gulf. You see the highlighted colors. This is energy in the lower levels of the atmosphere. If I put this in motion, there's a little bit of a spin with that. See how it gets going right here. I mean, this takes us all the way out to about tomorrow evening, and then it runs out of time. So it basically has the weekend to do something. And I think it could. And then the dominant low-level vortice will more than likely collide into Mexico. It's just a very weak tropical system. Doesn't have much time. Has about 36 hours. But let's see if it can do something. So interesting stuff here. Now going forward, there's another area I want to watch. And this is energy at about 500 millibars. So this is 18,000 feet up in the air, give or take a couple thousand. So now as we start to get into the first day of July, I want you to just kind of watch. This area right into here. Okay. What happens here is energy gets trapped under a building ridge to the north. And as it does so, you're just going to get a lot of color sort of dancing around this area. This is energy sort of getting trapped over sections of the Gulf. And as we keep going here, some of this could collide into Florida. This could make for a pretty wet pattern potentially next week across these areas. And this kind of dances over Florida, and then it kind of gets pulled back over Florida and then screams across areas of the northern Gulf. But, it's something to watch here. I think something sneaky could form, and model guidance is probably going to struggle handling this. And if you do look at sort of the precipitation water values, which the moisture in the atmosphere, it indicates just a lot of tropical moisture kind of in this area, right? And this could definitely mess up some 4th of July plans. And this eventually gets pushed into Florida as we are getting into Thursday, Friday of next week. So it's just something to watch in that area. But that's all I got. Thank you all for tuning in. We'll continue to watch this. But I think this is good sort of refreshing up talk on the tropics to kind of get us ready when we're breaking down something more substantial, in my opinion, inevitably in the future. So God bless all y'all. Have a wonderful day. We'll talk to you soon. And that's all I got.